Hey everyone, it's Adrienne here. Welcome. Today I wanted to share with you chapter 4 of this little video series that I was called to share called Building the Bridge. And part of the inspiration was there are a lot of sensitive empaths, healers, creators that are very visionary, very dialed into these regenerative energies on the planet, but there's been a disconnect around grounding that into practical everyday impact. And so this one's for you. I'm calling this week's chapter Embodied Democracy. At least that's the title for now. It might change, but you get the drift. The theme has to do with how do we bring our ideals, our visions for things that don't exist yet and anchor them into the planet in the midst of the collapse of old systems. How do we keep our frame of reference anchored, grounded, and energized and fueled in a way that is of service, of aliveness, of healing and wholeness? So that's what I'm going to share with you today. Part of my challenge, and you might be able to relate, is that for many, like many of us on the planet, I've had my foot in the real world, in the systems and structures of the real world, and then I have this other foot in the world of what I see is possible. And for me, the greatest challenge of this time is how do we bring both together? And so today, I thought I would share with you some steps I've taken personally to make this shift. It hasn't always been easy. It's at times been confusing and then at times incredibly wonderful and miraculous. So I want to share with you a little bit about that because some people have asked me, like, Adrienne, how did you make the shift from your 3D teaching job into the world of being a facilitator, a coach, a healer? And so I wanted to give you some practical things that happened because I think the more that we share our stories, the more that they come alive for other people and they start becoming more of a possibility. And they don't seem so scary or like such a big jump. So I'm going to share that with you today. But before I get to these practical events that happened and how I navigated them, I want to share with you a couple themes that have been arising this last week in all of this shift and change that's been happening on the world stage. And it has to do with our journey of being humans and how we are being called to reorientate ourselves. And before I go into that, I just want to remind you before I forget that if you missed any of the earlier chapters, for the introduction, I'll put the links in the description of this video so you can check them out if you're interested. So with that being said, there are big shifts happening, as I mentioned, personally, collectively, and this is just my little contribution about how we can maintain a line through it all. It's often hard to see change. It's hard to see our own change when we're in the midst of it. A lot of times it's not till hindsight that we get the full depth of the transformation that we've been going through. So I don't want to underestimate or downplay what's been happening. For me personally, you might have your own version of this. I have been uprooting generational patterns, experiential imprints, genetic and epigenetic information, clearing that. And I have been doing that for many years, probably before I even knew that I was doing it, because I didn't have any way to explain it. I didn't have the language. And so another reason why I'm sharing this is I hope that if you're hearing this and you're going through something that you don't have the words for it, that it doesn't mean that it's not happening or that it doesn't exist. It just means that perhaps you don't quite have the frame of reference to put it in language yet. And that's a process. So at this time, as we're moving through this ending of a cycle, we are pulling up, we are clearing the land. Let's say we are the land. We are part of the earth. Our bodies contain information from the earth, the planet. And as the yogis say, it's the end of the Kali Yuga cycle, which are the Hindu cycles of time. Depending on who you talk to, it's the end of an approximately 26,000 year cycle. And we're in the process. I guess there's like, again, depending on who you talk to, a 300 to 400 year transition time between cycles. And so there's no hard date, but we're in it. Let's just say we're in it. So we're being invited now to find more enlivening ways, more honest ways, more conscious ways of living. And that's going to create some discomfort. Let's just be honest. Our old ways of orientating ourselves to the world, as I just mentioned, are in the process of dissolving. And because everything is connected, our body, our mind, our energy, our emotion, this uncertainty ripples through all the levels of our being. And we can't cut ourselves up into little compartments because each part of us is connected to the whole. And so this is, I guess, what really is highlighted for me at this time is people are looking to leaders that are stuck in the old paradigm and constantly being frustrated and let down because that model of leadership isn't what's going to take us. It's not going to bridge us to the future. And so what's being called for is what I'm calling leader as healer, or I guess you could say leader as healer. They're the same because in order to provide the kind of leadership that will be required now is collective leadership, and it's embodied leadership. And so I want to say a little bit about that and what that might look like in regards to theme. So two main themes have been coming up recently around this idea of embodied democracy and what that's going to look like. And the first theme that's been arising into my awareness is called erasure. And I just heard it like that, erasure. And it's not, I'm not referring to the historical erasure that the current administration is trying to do, at least in the United States and maybe other places, renaming the Gulf of Mexico, trying to redraw lines between the United States and Canada, things like that. Trying to remove diversity from the American historical, the contributions of different groups, the banning of books and things like that. But this is the kind of erasure that happens when we're forced to ignore parts of ourselves to fit into systems that don't support who we really are as humans and the effect of that on our humanity. And so it's ironic that at a time where current administration is coming in trying to actually go backwards in history rather than move through this juncture that they don't know how to move through. And a lot of it's not even conscious. They probably wouldn't be open to this conversation. So they're wanting to go backwards to an imagined time when things were manageable, when everyone knew who was in power or who had power. And this blurring of lines is upsetting to identity. And of course it is. But on the other side of that, there's many people, myself being one of them, that have had to ignore or erase parts of ourselves, parts of myself that had no place to fit into the public address, which is a dismissal of life force energy, which of course is going to turn into unconscious shadow. And when we have unconscious shadow, there are going to be, whenever we repress life energy, it will be expressed, usually in toxic or disconnected behaviors. And you probably have seen this or witnessed this, maybe in your own family, maybe in yourself, maybe you're witnessing this right now out in the world, where people are taking action and they're disconnected from the deeper motivation of their action. They're also disconnected from the effect of their action, where the desire and the motivation behind their action might be really important, like maybe in service of a really important need, but it ends up hurting other people. And so we're at the juncture in our development, our evolution of humanity, where we're trying to work out this crossroads of operated in a way where we no longer have to cause harm in order to be self-expressed. So that's one piece, this erasure. And this is connected to the next theme that's been popping up in my awareness. And this is what's printed on American or US currency, the pluribus unum, which means out of many, there's one. And money being the representation of value of the trade of life energy in our country. And so this ideal points to unity with diversity. And that's not what's happening now. There's a label, illegal label being put on people, even those that are in an agreement, an existing contract that the government is attempting to break without notice, other than a verbal declaration that this is what we're doing. But somewhere along the way, we've twisted this. I think it's always probably been this way since the beginning of the founding of the United States, that statement, unity within diversity, actually was never realized. What happened was a duality was the main metaphor at the base of our country. It was us versus them, right versus wrong, worthy versus unworthy, legal versus illegal. And so the systems we created out of that in the name of unity were actually reinforced division. But now we're being invited to reimagine all of our systems across the board. We're being, I want to say the word invited, but we're being actually pulled by life itself, the intelligence of life, to find a better way to reclaim the deeper meaning of how do we actually embody diversity in a group. And this is some deep wounds around community, around belonging, around being seen, being valued, about having the right to live and have your basic needs met, and not only your basic needs, but your emotional needs, your psychological needs, your needs for self-realization and development, and coming into your own power and sovereignty. And really, we can define power as the ability to choose your own direction in life and where you want to go and how you want to be. And right now, a lot of people don't have that. If you don't have the money to buy the $1 million gold visa, then you're kind of SOL. So it comes down to those who can pay their way. And that's not really the ideal, at least from a philosophical perspective that the United States was really founded on. And so I mentioned earlier this week that I pulled the bee card from my animal deck, and I love bees because they are the embodied expression of democracy. And that's kind of where I got that title. The bees thrive because they work together. Each one is making a valuable contribution in their own way. They don't necessarily compete to dominate. They serve the well-being of the hive. And the queen doesn't rule as a way to dominate. She supports the function of the whole hive and the production of their food source, which is the honey. So it's a perfect image of embodied democracy, everyone in the right relationship, offering their gifts to the greater good of the whole. And for me, that is the diversity as one, fully living in the pluribus unum. And while there's no, I'm not a total optimist, although I tend to be, that we are learning. We're in the process of learning how to build that kind of world through our imagination, through collaboration, through deeper listening. And the current systems that we have aren't going to take us there. And so this requires creativity and innovation and inspiration. And I want to share more about that, but that'll probably be the topic for the next chapter next week. So hold off on that topic right now. Today, I promised that after I went over those two main themes that have been popping up in my life recently. I wanted to share with you about the practicality of how all of these themes have impacted my personal life. And I invite you to listen to this through the lens of your own life. I'm not sharing this story for just to share. I'm sharing it because I want it to be used as a tool for personal insight and clarity and maybe inspiration, as I mentioned, for what you're going through and making these courageous leaps from maybe a lifetime of living a certain way, and being able to hear a story can help you begin to envision it for yourself, let's say. So some of you might know that for approximately 17 years or so, I taught in public schools. But slowly, I started to feel the pull towards something different. And so I can't say that there was one day it started. It was a slow progression. So you can kind of check in and say, where am I in that pull? What am I being pulled to? So I just knew there was something else that was more in alignment with my values and my work in the world, what I was being called to. And eventually, as you may know by now, if you don't, I'll tell you that I became a somatic coach, an energy healer, an intuitive guide. And like I said, it didn't happen overnight. I've been training for this for many, many years. I was doing it on the side while I was teaching, but most recently I made the shift through my personal training, my emotional and psychological clearing that's been happening for at least 25 years, and I made the shift about 5 years ago. So I just wanted to give you like the timeline that this has been a progression. So I'm giving the long view, but I guess I'm giving context for this shift that's been going on. And a friend recently asked me, how did you make this leap, Adrienne, from your 3D teaching job? So I wanted to share with you the 6 main reasons or stepping stones that allowed me to make the jump and leave. And the first one was that I believe that the universe is our mirror. And I realized that if I had created that job and the world of teaching with all of its procedures and protocols and systemic conditions, that I could create something different. I could create something more in alignment with what nourished me, something that truly served me, because when I'm being truly served, then I have more to share with others than to serve them. And so the second reason is that I felt a calling, and it wasn't just a thought, it was a feeling in my body that grew louder and louder. And I had to just trust it. I had to trust that my body knew, even though it was scary. And I want to say that I had a lot of people around me questioning my decisions, saying, don't leave now, stay, and, make sure you get your pension. And so there was a lot of people in the peanut gallery, let's say, that were questioning what I was doing. So I didn't have to just get over my uncertainty. I had to address all of their uncertainty, which I realized was just mine being mirrored outside of me. And then I thought about types of relationships that I wanted to be in. And I thought, the kind of conditions I was experiencing in this job, the way I was being treated, what was considered acceptable, I wouldn't accept that behavior from anyone else in my life. Why would I accept it from my job? And I realized that I was in an abusive relationship with my job. And that's why my body was reacting. And I had to listen. I had to choose me. And I'm so glad that I did. It was the right thing to do. The third reason or stepping stone that allowed me to make this jump is that I had built community around me. I had several groups of people that were helping me hold a vision for my life. Just like I had the naysayers around me, I also had people around me that could hold a vision for what was possible outside of this really limited position that I had at one time really enjoyed, but had gotten to the point where it was just a limitation, and I no longer could participate. And it was through those communities that gave me the ability to see myself in a different way, to have faith in my experience, to trust it, and to make the jump. So the fourth reason for stepping stone is that I received sign, and I've always been a person who has lived my life this way. I always, just ask my higher power, God, whatever you want to call it, supreme being, the intelligence of life, to give me signs. Like, if I'm supposed to do this, show me a sign. And so I was still hemming and hawing. I had just completed my form to request a leave of absence, and I had just printed it out. It was on my desk when I had a meeting with the principal. And so I went to the principal's office, and she was really a bit anxious. And she was like, "Oh, Adrienne, I'm so sorry. I have to tell you that next year we don't have enough enrollment here at the school to keep your position. So you're going to be involuntary transferred to another school." And in that instant, I knew this is the sign. So I let my principal know that I had just completed my request for leave, and that was confirmation that it was time to go. And she was very relieved, because I know she felt super bad about that decision after everything I had contributed to the school and the community. So it was, as soon as I took one step, life just moved it rapidly forward. Like, it was already done. So that was number 4. And the 5th one was, I was fortunate to have the resource. I had savings. I could rent my house out so I could travel around the world for a year and really drop into my body and reconnect and travel to different lands and find out exactly what was next for me. What am I truly over being a classroom teacher? It wasn't an easy decision. I had invested a lot of time, a lot of money, a lot of energy, and it did have a really special place in my heart. So I was preparing to leave without even realizing it. I had been stacking all of the conditions in my life to make this transition. So when I finally got ready, that made it one step easier for me, realizing, like, okay, I have this in place. I can do this. And then the 6th reason, and probably it was the one that, like, broke the straw that broke the camel's back, let's say. There had been a beginning of the year professional development, and the police department had come in to share their safety protocol with us for active shooters. And we were all sitting there, and they said, the policy of the police department for teachers, if there is ever an active shooter on your campus, we advise that you either hide, fight, or run. And that moment deeply shook me, because I realized that that's what my nervous system does. That's not a school-wide policy. And I realized I could no longer work in a system that didn't value the lives of teachers or students. And I realized that that was a reflection of a system that valued profit over safety. And later that same year, this is the year before I left, there was a student that was arrested for threatening to bring guns to school. And so all of that just kind of came together in the perfect storm and confirmed that it was time for me to go. And it's never easy to make life-changing decisions like that. Scary, but it's also in alignment with the moment that we're living in. The moment that we're living in is huge. It's transformative. We're in the midst of confronting the roots of our cultural systems, let's say, and how they've shaped our ideals, our values, our ideas of power and belonging. And it's reciprocal, right? It's both. As value shapes us, we shape value, and it's a constant dance. And so we're being asked if we want to keep doing this dance. Is it fun anymore? Is it enlivening? Is it nourishing? Is it for the common good? And we're being asked to imagine something new, something more inclusive, something sustainable, and, dare I say, regenerative. So I think I shared this quote. it depends on who you ask, who originally said this, but the quote is violence. All violence is a failure of imagination. And so, if we can imagine new ways of being together, we can create them. And we're all being invited right now to reclaim our energy, our voice, our inner authority, and to stop giving our power away, or to bring awareness to how we might be giving our power away, to honor the life force within us, the wisdom, the intelligence, and use it in service for something more, the whole. And this is where I come back to later as healer. Healer comes from the word health. Health, the root of health is wholeness. So I have to say that this part right now that I'm going to share with you is probably the most important part. So pay special attention to what I'm about to say next. Are you ready? Here we go. What we're witnessing right now, I believe, is an evolution / revolution, revolution in service of evolution. And it's happening through the archetype of healer leaders, which is the embodiment of leadership. And it will choose those that are willing to do the healing, that are willing to update their own sense of identity, their interrelational space, the awareness of the space between people that shapes our social and cultural fascia that currently excludes. It's based on hierarchy and polarization, where one side of a duality is given more value or favored over the other. It's a model of duality that has been overlaid onto human worth and value. And so this requires all of us to learn to bring our attention to the shared space in between ourselves, in between each other, as well as the space, as Viktor Frankl wrote about in his book, Man's Search for Meaning. He talked about the space between a stimulus and the response to that stimulus. And he said, this is the space where all liberation, freedom, and growth exist in this space. This is the space of choice of how I respond to the world versus react unconsciously. And this is the space in Mind Heart Space that my academy is named after. This will be the space in which the new world will be created in. And like I said, I'm going to share more about that in next chapter, next week, about this creation and innovation and this imagination and the space in which this is going to be generated from, of Genesis, let's say. And so if you want to hear about that, I invite you to tune in next week to find out more about that topic. If you're interested in imagining, being an imagineer of this new world and how you can reclaim that space for yourself as a healer leader. And so this is a call to a new kind of power, one that is not rooted in domination or fear, but in energy and awareness and connection. It's a reclaiming of our personal dominion, as I said, that space between the mind and the heart. And we can stop giving our power away to systems that aren't serving us. And this is the core of building the bridge, the reorganizing of old structures, consciously creating new ones grounded in love and unity and possibility and in diversity. Excuse me. And I think this is so interesting. I'll share one last thing with you before I go. So this is what I was sharing with you about signs and my connection, my confirmation that we're all connected and life isn't working for me. It's working for all of us together to lift us up into our best and highest expression. It's not what you're going to see on the TV. It's not what they're going to tell you on most talk shows or radio or TV shows. But as I was toying with this chapter this week, the word domain came up repeatedly. And I was on a walk in the morning just yesterday, and I looked up and I saw a truck and it said old domain. And I was like, yes, of course, the old domain, or the way those people that were allowed dominion are being, the system that kept that dominion is shifting so it can be shared with all. And so I will end this chapter here this week. And as I do, I just want to let you know I have a couple offerings coming up. If you would like some support around what's calling you in your life, what you're wanting to call into your life. I have a weekly circle called the Invoke Women's Circle, and it's a space where women can be each other's dream doulas. They're miracle whisperers. We can help you hold the vision that you might not be able to hold for yourself yet, and support you as you discover the embodied frequency that is required in order to call that thing into your life. And everything that we call into our life is not just for us. It affects everyone around us. So if you're seeking support or like-minded connection, like-hearted connection, you can check that out. I'll put the link in the description. And I want to let you know that I am holding another Energetic Toolbox class, and it's a 6-week class focused on energetic boundaries, how to create boundaries, and how to use and direct your own personal energy in conscious ways, how to clear your energy, how to disconnect from other people's energy. A lot of empaths have such a large field that they're pulling in other people's information and mistaking it for their own. And so how can we practice a little bit of energetic hygiene for ourselves? And it's also a gift to others, because when we pull our energy out of other people's space, they have more room to be connected to their own energy. So I'll also put the link to that in the description of this video. And I'll leave you with this. We are all the bridge builders, each one of us. We are and can together help humanity cross into this new way of living that's being called. And you're not alone. Your presence, your vision, your energy all matter. In fact, they are the matter that will serve as the architecture of this bridge. So thanks for being here. And until next week, I just want to remind you not to forget what a valuable treasure you are. And until I see you next, take care and bye.